Hey, Sam, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. We're still waiting on Dustin. Dustin's my co-host. I worked with him at the DOD. So
Right.
he's got like two like newborns running around and a 3-year-old running naked through the house. So he's always like a little bit late. Try to
No
lock it in.
problem.
How are you doing? The last time we saw each other, I think well no, Lou was definitely still alive because we were having a meal with him at a
Yeah.
Mexican food place.
Yep.
How you been?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, you're living in the US now?
Yeah, just in Cincinnati.
Okay. Okay. What settled you in Cincinnati? Just because like CrossFit Conjugates there or
Uh, I like met my partner through there, and she was from Indiana, and then moved down here. She was actually managing conjugate for a while. And so it was easier for me to travel and be here uh, than the other way around. And so don't train at Conjugate anymore. I'm at a place called CrossFit Cornerstone.
okay.
It's probably like 20 minutes away from from Conjugate.
Okay.
It's not far.
Okay. Okay, rock on. How often do you get home?
So I've actually just been back for 2 months.
Okay.
I probably came back like 5 weeks ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Do you like it in the States more than the UK? If all things were equal?
They're very similar. There's certain things that like I miss about home, but it's not necessarily the place. It's just like the people, which would be the same like when I'm home in the UK. There's certain people that I like miss out here. So it's more I would say about like the people than the place.
Gotcha. How often does Jouse get on you about training anymore? Or is it really just with him as like autopilot with you now?
He didn't need to get on at me about anything. Like, so we've been working together since 2011. So it's pretty much easy days. I'm a lot easier to coach now than I was in 2011.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Were you a little more like strong armed back then? Like you want to do it a certain way, or
it was just more that I just wanted to do always more and just wanted to do what everybody else was doing. So like if I went to train somewhere, I'd want to jump in with everybody, and you gradually learn that's not always the smart thing.
Right. Right. Were you one of those that like would see in the early advent of social media, oh, Camille's doing this, well, I have to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that what it was?
No, it was more like when I was training, like actually in person with people, like, oh, that looks fun. I'll do that instead.
Okay.
Instead of doing the thing that I was probably needed to do.
Right. You suck at, right.
It was like, there's 5 of us doing this workout. You want to jump in? Oh yeah, that looks great. I'll do that.
Oh, how many times did you do that and it completely shot like your training week?
I don't like in the early days as well, like when CrossFit was new, it was a bit of an experiment anyway, just how much volume you should be doing. And kind of in the early days, it was like full send all sessions every day. Right. It's like eventually you get to the stage where you're like, that's not sustainable. And it's like, right, okay, let's have more of a structure. Let's have deloads. Let's
yeah.
Let's focus on what areas we're wanting to work on right now, and then we'll come back around to other things.
Well, before we like really jump into this, so make a virtual introduction. So Sam, this is Dustin. Dustin, this is Sam. So
hi.
I've already given a lowdown of how many children you have running ramshot through your house.
That wasn't the issue at all. That was not the issue. I got all the girls under control. It was legitimately just internet connective issues.
Awesome.
Yeah,
okay,
we're good though.
So Sam, I really want to jump into really just like nuts and bolts of training and how your training has evolved either with your own personal beliefs or outside influences. So if you can just give us like a really quick and dirty of how you got into CrossFit, like what was sparked you to actually do actual competitive CrossFit instead of just like taking it as like a casual thing?
So I was a full-time firefighter. I just retired from playing football or soccer, as you guys call it. I was looking for something else to do and started doing triathlons and had some success. I was like a pretty good amateur triathlete. And then somebody recommended doing CrossFit to get stronger for the triathlons. So I started in 2009 and actually qualified for my first games in 2010. So I just kind of went to the games more for fun. Triathlon was still like my sport.
Right.
Did the first games and I was like, hell, this is so much more fun than triathlons.
Right. Okay. So that's what
made the shift then.
Okay. What was that like in the early days? If you give a real quick snapshot, we'll dig into this later, but 2010 versus 2020, 2021, what's the biggest difference you see when you go to the games?
Well, one, the volume of events. Like 2010, we did one event on the Friday night, and then we competed Saturday, Sunday. Whereas now athletes start on Wednesday, get a rest day Thursday, and then compete full day Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's over 4 days instead of kind of 2.5. Mm-hmm. And two, just the level of competitors. So like the first event that we had at the games that year, was Amanda with squat snatches at 95 pounds. And that was like my 1 rep max. And you like compared to then in 2017, they did Amanda 0.45 and you were doing 21.59 of the same weight. So just like, it's just evolved so much.
Okay. Yeah. When you were getting going, you mentioned earlier, it was always from the start, it was full send all the time. Risk down, go. Oh yeah. So what shifted? What moment was like, you hit your mind like, oh, I can't do that all the time? Was it you or was it someone else that had an influence on you?
No, I think like, obviously in the early days, nobody really knew like CrossFit as a sport was relatively new. And if you think about the methodology, if you're only going in for an hour a day, 5 times a week, that hour, it is all about the intensity, and that's where the results come from. So when you're then going from that mindset and then trying to compete in the sport, you still think, right, I've got to max out my lift. I've got to go full send on this Metcon. I've got to rowing intervals. I've got to be hitting max capacity every time. And then you soon realize, because you're not just training that 1 hour, you're actually training, probably back in those days, it was like 3 to 4 hours. And then you're training like sometimes 6-7 days a week. Yeah. Your body can't sustain that. And I would say that a lot of athletes experience burnout or got injured. And that's when you start to be like, oh shit, we can't do this. And I think that's where a lot of athletes then started to get the help of like experienced coaches, start to work with teams. And it then really progressed into what I would compare to a professional sport. It wasn't just individuals winging it. It had to be that you were following a structure, you had periodization, and it became like any other sport.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Before you got to that point, were you finding that you were looking at all the other outlets as far as nutrition and recovery and those things? So you were just full sending and realizing like, well, now I'll get my diet on track and then I'll really focus on recovery, before you realize like, nope, I'm really reaching my limit potential? Or did you kind of go reverse? You just went held the wheels and then started adding those things in later, once you realize there was, how do I maximize doing this if I'm going to do it this hard all the time?
Yeah, I think that's definitely another issue, is nobody really knew how to fuel to be a CrossFit athlete either. Like, especially in the early days, like I was paleo. I was like competing on like 0 carbs.
Yeah.
And it's like, it wasn't until like a few years later where people were like, oh, these athletes are competing from like 8 a.m. in the morning until 8 p.m. at night for multiple days. It's like, they need to be taking on carbs. They need to be taking on like sugars. And so it was just, I think, very much a little steep learning curve in the first few years. And it's definitely kind of like changed the sport. And I think with that came the big jump in just how good the athletes were. The athletes are no longer overtraining. They're getting adequate recovery. They're getting the right nutrition. So all of a sudden, the level of what the competitors were took a huge like jump. And I think we're seeing another jump now coming in the level of competitors with the teenagers coming through.
Sure.
These are the ones that have like started the sports when they were 7 and had all this knowledge and had like this progression from an early age, haven't had to make these mistakes and then come through. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see over the next like 2 or 3 years, just all these teenagers come through. I think there'll be a big change in the faces that we see at the games.
Yeah, like and Dustin and I've talked about this at length, and then being on military bases, there are a lot of large proponents of CrossFit on military bases. And we've always discussed with them that, like you mentioned, at a certain point, what they're watching on ESPN, those men and women, they are professional athletes because they have a multitude of coaches working with them, a gymnastics coach, a strength coach, an actual CrossFit coach. They're going somewhere to actually like recover. Do you have someone in your head you can name off? I mean, not their name, but have like multiple coaches for different things. And how many coaches like would one top end CrossFit athlete have?
Like in 2013, I started then working with multiple coaches. So I had a guy back in the UK who would kind of like piece together the CrossFit side of things. I then sought out and was working with Sean Lynn for my gymnastics. I started working with Laura Phelps for my like powerlifting and strength. Then I started working with a guy called Danny Lopez down in Miami for my Olympic lifting. I came from more of an endurance background. So in the end, I was working with the 3 specialist coaches and took care of my own kind of cardiovascular endurance programming. And then I started to incorporate that kind of into my CrossFit training. So I was working with 3 specialty coaches and then using my own knowledge for the rest. So it wouldn't have been uncommon that athletes could have actually had like 4 or 5 specialty coaches. I think now what we're seeing that CrossFit's been around for a lot longer and your CrossFit coaches now have enough knowledge of the Olympic lifting and training cycles, have enough knowledge now of the gymnastics and powerlifting that you'll see coaches maybe receive input from specialty coaches, but they'll be in charge of kind of like the overall program. So your athlete might now only be working with one coach. So it's kind of gone like in a full circle.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, when you had those 3 specialty coaches, who was in charge of melding all that together, or did they all communicate? How did that work? Because that sounds like that could be really great or really bad.
I did it.
Okay.
So when I I came out to the States in 2014. Mm-hmm. And that was when I was spending more time. I would split my time between being in Cincinnati and working with Laura, and then being in Miami working with Danny. And then Sean would come and spend time at either locations. Mm-hmm. So I would get eyes on with the specialty coaches, and then like I took care of piecing things together and making sure that I had like a weekly structure, that I wasn't overdoing one side or the other, and then obviously not neglecting like the endurance and the actual like Metcon sport specific CrossFit.
Right. Would you prioritize those? Like powerlifting would be in your quote unquote off season, further out from the games, closer you got, then you start incorporating like more of the Olympic lifting, or is it all encompassed as much as you can handle all of them at one time?
So the way I kind of did it, so I followed for a long time kind of the conjugate method of um, the lower day, upper day, rest day, where I would do Olympic lifting, and then the lower upper day, and then I would normally do that training on a morning, and then the afternoon would be my gymnastics focus or an ollie focus if it was a lighter day, and kind of incorporate it all together like that.
Okay. Did you ever
Gotcha.
did Lopez ever have you do, or was he a fan of doing cleans against band tension? Because I know that that's some people like it, some people don't.
It's something that I did with conjugate. I don't think I ever did it with Danny, but Danny had also done the powerlifting seminars with Laura and Shane.
Oh, okay.
He knew about the methods. So when I spent time in Miami and I was focusing more on the ollie lifting, he would ensure that I had the accessories and stuff sprinkled in. So I was still touching on some of the conjugate stuff while my main focus was the ollie lifting.
Oh, rock on. So Laura and Danny were knew each other.
Yeah.
And with communication. Oh, that's great. Okay. Rock on. Rock on. So how did you meet Laura, and how did that whole aspect begin?
They came to Manchester to do the powerlifting seminar at my gym, and it might have even been during the open or just before the open, but I would get in early each morning, and I was doing training before the seminar, so they kind of saw me and was like, who is this crazy person? And then when they started working with me on the seminar, Shane said that I had a lot of potential, but I had some weak areas, and he'd love to work with me. And they had two people assisting on the seminar called Bethany and Cody. And when I was going to go out and spend a week at conjugate, Bethany opened her home up to me, so I didn't have to stay in a hotel, and they later became really good friends. And every time that I would be in Cincinnati to work there, I would always just stay at Bethany's house. So I was very fortunate in that respect, because it wouldn't have been as fun to just be stuck in a hotel and trying to train
by yourself.
Yeah.
I'm assuming at that point, were you living the life of a professional athlete?
No, I was still a firefighter. So,
okay.
So 2013, I took a sabbatical when the Open started. So that was my first kind of experience of being a professional athlete. And then it obviously paid off, and I won the games later on that year.
Right.
Right.
Right. Do you ever feel that looking at, we'll stay with the women now, looking at the women now, and of course, we all know that there's this, like you've already mentioned it, a giant chain of teenagers coming up that could just go to the 09 and 2010 games and be competitive with, everyone in the upper. Do you ever feel that there's anything missing from that generation that your generation of CrossFitters had? Anything from a mentality standpoint to they should be doing this, or they could be doing this better? Are they relying too much on technology?
I don't know if only time will tell, but if you look at any of the athletes that were there in the early days, we all came from varied backgrounds. And so when you get events where it's unknown objects that we have to use, and you just got to kind of think on the fly, you have to have this adaptability and this kind of athleticism. Mm-hmm. It's if you've only ever done CrossFit from all the years and all you've done is structured Olympic lifting, gymnastics, do you have the ability to overcome things that you've not actually been trained to do?
Yeah. That gets into a little bit what I'm really curious about you as a person and how it transitioned to an athlete. But I guess we all start forming kind of these things that are going to be our framework for who we are as a competitor and whatever we choose to do. When did you start to kind of develop those things, like earlier in childhood and stuff? And what were you exposed to and what were you doing that kind of started to build that framework? Because I think there's a lot of life experience that can kind of be developed in a game setting, and then all of a sudden you can extrapolate that into life and use that as kind of like your springboard into, you know, being competitive. Because so much of being a competitor is like, can you compete? Like, do you have the mental, not just the mental toughness, but like, can you maintain all this when all this other stuff's going on? And you clearly had that. You're clearly a savage competitor just watching you compete. You know, there's very talented people that are good at doing certain things, but you could tell like you had a mental side that, you know, I don't even know that you can build that into someone. Some of it might be hardwired.
I was definitely competitive from an early age. I had a younger brother, so I had to beat him at everything. If I couldn't beat him at something, then I wouldn't do it.
Oh, that would do it, I guess.
And like I suppose it comes from my mom. Like, she wanted us to experience and try everything, so she tried to get us into as many sports as kind of like we could, and it was like some things would stick. I was definitely like, I played football from a young age, like when I was in primary school. That's like your elementary, whatever the
Yep.
first school is. There was no girls football team, so I just played on the boys football team.
Really?
Like,
Okay.
it never even bothered me. I had a brother. All my cousins were all boys. Like, we spent a lot of time at my grandparents. They lived opposite a farm, and they had 2 boys. So like, I always just played with the boys. It didn't bother me. So when there was no girls football team, I was like, oh, I'll just go on the boys team. And they were like, okay, then I suppose we can't stop that.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's all you're ever exposed to is, you know, competing against males at a young age, I mean, that's your standard, that's your measuring stick.
Yeah.
So I just feel like if you did that constantly, your framework of having that be a concern, and then also just maybe seeing, you know, slightly more competitive competition just in childhood, that would do a lot, I think.
I just liked as well, kind of like how rough they were. Like, I used to play rough with my brother, so it was like, that was fine by me. So I played football, I played rugby, I raced mountain bikes, ran cross country, I swam, like basically anything we could do. The street that I grew up on, there was probably like anywhere between like 10 and 15 kids playing at a time. Okay. We lived at the top of a cul-de-sac, so every evening we'd either be playing football, we'd be playing roller hockey, we'd be playing bulldogs charge, like anything like that. It was just always physical, always just kind of like staying active.
Yeah. That's cool.
I have to imagine, as a firefighter, and I'm not going to pretend to know what that job really is. I've seen the movie Backdraft, so I kind of have an idea of what it is. But you're constantly going into situations you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, how much of that do you think, if at all, carried over to what Dustin brought up, where you get put into a situation at the CrossFit Games, you don't know what's happening, and it's just another thing for you, like, whatever, let's do it. Like,
yeah, so like, I don't know if that's just something that's innate in a person, or if it's something that's developed, but it definitely, like, whether that was already in me and that made me a good firefighter, which obviously carried on into CrossFit, but it's the same, like, when you're at a job and you could be there for multiple hours, you could be starving, like, you could be aching, but you kind of like have this ability to switch off to everything, and you're getting the job at hand done. Yeah. There was like some nights where we'd be working like all the way through the night. you've not had any sleep, and you're still waiting for the next shift to come on to relieve you. You've been at an incident since 7 p.m. and it's now like 7 a.m. and you're still physically working, you're still physically doing things, but you have to have that ability to kind of like switch off and do it, which obviously like in CrossFit, in a different concept that we're not working for nearly 24 hours, but you're doing these workouts, and in their essence, the brutal workouts, they're meant to separate people by like who wants it the most, who is willing to go into the dark place and keep on pushing. And it's like that ability to switch off to those pain signals, the ability to switch off to the brain that's telling you to stop and to still carry on and still go. Like, I definitely am not the most talented CrossFitter, but I can hurt pretty much well.
As a coach and watching athletes, you can tell that is like that skill comes across, I think, watching you compete, that you have the ability to go to dark water and like thrive in that space. Like you're not shutting down, you're comfortable there. So that's I mean, that's kind of what I was getting as these things in life that really carry over as a competitor in a tremendous way. And yeah.
I mean, talking about coaching, like Sam, you know, we had Joust on, we've had Emma on.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, like Dustin and I, we geeked out talking to Joust, especially on and off camera. It was absolutely incredible. And his accent was great. And it was just a great time. When you're looking at a coach like that, when he came into your competitive life, what changed?
So I started working with him in 2011. And at the time, he was purely kind of just a movement specialist. He worked out of the gym where my coach at the time was. So I kind of like worked with them both. I came into CrossFit and I was fit enough to be an athlete, but I didn't move well.
Okay.
I had kind of like raw strength from being a firefighter, but like terrible like mobility and terrible like positions. And so working with him, we tried to like improve like how I moved. And if you looked at the Sam Briggs who competed in 2011, injured in 2012, we had the time to really strip everything back. And then how I moved in 2013 was like a completely different athlete. Then when I moved to the US in 2014, I just stopped working with James just purely because we weren't in the same country anymore.
Right, yeah.
And it was in just before the games in 2016, I was back in the UK and I was doing a workout. I went to do something and something had happened with my shoulder. I couldn't lift my arm more than an inch off the side of my body. So I reached out, the only person that I knew, I reached out to James. And he devised a plan. He was going to be out at the games anyway. He was helping Team Yas, who podiumed that year.
Okay.
So he was going to be out there anyway. And he was like, look, I'm going to be with the team, but I'm willing to help you. I'll be there. Let's get you through the games. And basically, we would get the shoulder working before every event. The adrenaline would get me through the event, and then my shoulder would switch off and I'd carry my arm off after every event. Yeah. But we got through the games and I took fourth. I was like,
those are the things that make me a fanboy of Sam Briggs, is those things right there.
Right. And what was it? Did you completely like strip out your labrum?
Yeah, I had torn labrum, torn bicep tendon, and I'd done something to the AC joint.
Okay, that's not funny. We're not laughing because it's funny.
No,
we're laughing because
it's not.
It's fucking awesome. That's
her name should have been the Savage Engine, not just the engine.
That's right.
Do you remember by chance from that 2012 to 2013, what was the biggest thing you and Joust worked with that increased your movement pattern? Like, what was the biggest thing? Like, this is absolute garbage, and you stripped it back. You worked it all the way forward. Do you remember what it was and what the progressions were, give or take?
It was definitely like, I would say my squat mechanics, being able to squat better, just probably mobility in the hips and just getting the right muscles to activate and trying to improve my thoracic. Like I naturally, like I would love to be just rounded, sat on a bike, doing something like that. That
like
is
Lance Armstronging it, yeah.
That is my comfortable position.
Okay.
So then put me in this position to front squat or like even then overhead squat to get any sort of position here. My thoracic wants to be the complete opposite way. That was the same. That was why handstand walking was one of the hardest movements for me because my body wants to be rounded. So try and handstand walk if you're in this position.
Yeah. Good luck.
So a lot of work done that I could open up my thoracic. I mean, it's still not perfect, but it's definitely a hell of a lot better than what it used to be.
Yeah, was that a lot like, do you do a lot like T-spine rotations with you, or do you remember like
yeah, it would be like T-spine stuff. It would be, I just remember like squatting in various positions, toes forward, 1 foot forward, 1 foot forward, mid, wide, lunging, narrow, lunging wide, lunging, throwing dumbbells overhead, lunging with rotation. It was like, you name it, we did it.
And was that all to troubleshoot, or was that all actually a plan he had put out?
No, that's a plan that he like has. Like a lot of the stuff they do, like lunging is like a big part of kind of their principle.
We talked a lot about that. I
think
single leg work and just how it carries over. And then what he was probably getting at with you is corrective exercise is so much better done when you can kind of pick it apart from one side to another. Because I mean, oftentimes the imbalance isn't equal.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So that makes sense.
Okay, so you worked with him in 2016, blew the rotator cuff out.
Yeah, so found out I basically had nothing left at the front of the left shoulder. I'd seen that Emma McQuaid had like similar surgery and was back training. Shoot her a message. I'm like, oh, you'll have to let me know what your physio was.
right.
I need to have surgery. And she's like, let me speak to my physio. And they got me in with her surgeon. So I actually had the same surgeon and then worked with the same physio that she did. And then I was speaking to Joust and he was like, look, if you'd like to get back into competing, because I thought I was done. I was prepared to retire in 2016. He was like, if you want to still compete, I'd love to like get you back. But he's like, I control everything. It's like I take over all of your programming. And I was like, oh
no.
Means I have no say?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, I basically thought I was retiring. So I was like, well, it's worth a shot. Let's give it a go.
Right.
So I had the surgery and then we had a plan. I'd always wanted to do DFC. So we'd use that as kind of a tester. So basically 7 weeks post surgery, I started the qualifiers and then qualified for DFC and then placed second at DFC, I think, which was maybe 16 weeks post surgery. So it was pretty successful comeback.
I mean, what was your, before that shoulder, what was your best jerk PR?
245.
Did you ever get back to that?
I got back close. The same like with the snatch, pre-surgery was 180. I got back to 175. So after shoulder surgery, we got back to pretty much the same level on everything. Coming back from the elbow surgery is a complete different story.
Okay, what happened with that?
Still have problems with it now. I ruptured the medial collateral ligament. So basically everything in there is now like tighter. I'll never get the same extension.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
So it obviously fatigues a lot quicker. They had to go in the full elbow and open up. So like this tricep never got back to the same size as the left side. And just things now, because obviously I can fully stack the joint on the left. So things like handstand walking, anything where there's a lot of shoulder to overhead, a lot of handstand push-ups, it just fatigues a lot quicker. So yeah, it just never got back to that same. It was kind of like you did the big shoulder surgery and got back to the same numbers. So I was like, oh, easy days. We'll just get the elbow fixed and we'll be back there in no time.
Right. Right. When you, I mean, with your over a decade of experience, do you ever think when you have an injury like that, there's a lot of people, there are two different camps. One is keep everything even and just keep doing what you can do. And the other camp is dictated by the weak arm or the weaker limb. Do you have a preference?
So I do stuff to try and improve the strength in the right arm, but everything is dictated kind of like to that right arm. So if I'm starting to fatigue and movements breaking down because of the right arm, then that's where I'll stop. But like also with that, instead of beating myself up that, oh, I can't bench press this, I can't jerk this, instead I've gone and looked at other areas. Okay, right, the type of athlete that I am anyway, I have good events and my strength numbers, what's good for me isn't awesome in relation to how strong the games athletes are now anyway. So me taking a 25th and dropping down and taking a 30th isn't going to be that much difference. But if I can take an event where I would be coming 10th and turn that into a third, the points that you can pick up on that are going to make the most bang for the buck for me. So even though CrossFit is all about being the most well-rounded athlete, I've kind of had to take it another way and being like, right, okay, I can't be strong. Like my body cannot do that anymore. Like, so can I look at other areas? Where have I been like losing some points? Can I pick them up? One of the things was I'm not naturally a good swimmer. So can we improve there? And so in the swim events in the past, I might have been taking like 12th or 13th, and we've improved that to I was coming like 5th or 6th. So it's like taking events and like, okay, how can I pick up some more points here?
Sure.
Yeah, it was swimming just because I've met you multiple times in person. I've hugged you before. It's like hugging a pit bull. With the size of your back, is it a pure technique swimming issue then, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it's definitely a technique. All just like effort.
Yeah, just clawing at the water. Yeah.
And you'll see those who come from a swim background and they'll just be long stroke,
graceful,
effortless.
effortless.
Whereas I'm just windmilling along next to them and like expelling like 50% more energy to get the same distance.
Right. All that white water splashing up everywhere. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, some of that, I mean, watching some of the swim events, that might actually be a little bit advantageous when you're in a pile of human beings to be just swimming like a pit bull through there, because like I've seen people like trying to do good stuff. And it's like, well, that like what your training looked like goes out the window, because like now it is a dogfight in the water scenario. So I feel like you get away with just doing that, and actually it might pan out okay.
All right. When Joust took over your programming, Sam, after the anxiety was gone, did you enjoy that? Like not having to think about it and just working on doing?
It took a while to kind of get used to it. I think it'll be the first to admit that sometimes this programming is a bit boring, but it's the things that you should be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly,
I think he said that in different words, but he said exactly that.
Yeah.
And it's like he tries to hide it now. He'll give workouts really interesting names, and you'll be like, "Oh, what am I going to be doing?" And then you read it, and you're like, "Oh, that's the
same workout we did. You're just changing names now."
Right. Right. Oh my God.
That's
okay.
funny. That's
okay. So he took over your programming. 6 months into it, how'd you feel? Did you feel better or worse than you normally did at that time of the year?
It's hard to say because I just come off surgery.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, I got back to the numbers. I was competing at DFC. I like came second to Sarah, and Annie came third. So it was a legit like podium. It was legit athletes that I was going against. Made it back to the games that year and placed a respectable 9th. So it's kind of like, it was where we wanted to be.
Yeah, especially coming off 2 major or definitely 1 major surgery.
That was 1 surgery, and then 2018, like things were on track to be even better. All my strength numbers were like coming back. I was feeling like fitter than I'd like felt before. Like everything was just coming together. And then so I had problem with the elbow for years. So it was just a ticking time bomb. And unfortunately, I think it was like 3 weeks before regionals.
Okay. Can you describe to people out there who are watching this, who do CrossFit, may have an elbow pain, what your issue was feeling like before it actually went, so they can probably get ahead of a curve?
It was just little things like, so sometimes it would catch and I'd need to like get it to go. And just I would often get like some swelling on the inside of the elbow and just get kind of like that tendonitis sort of problem. I used to have to just kind of like strap it up a lot. You'll see over the course of probably 2013 to 2018, every now and again in competitions, I would have like the elbow strapped up. It would kind of be like one competition, it'd be fine. The next competition, I'd be strapped up, kind of hit and miss. It would always feel good kind of after deload. And then it would always be kind of like in the ramp up to competing, it would just start to kind of bother me again. And it's pretty much the same as like what Brookwell said.
Okay.
And then unfortunately hers went when she was in the middle of a heavy snatch. Luckily mine kind of half went when I was doing a snatch and ring muscle up workout. And it literally like felt like it needed to pop for the next couple of hours. And literally I was pushing myself up off of a table and it just went. So it must have just been like holding on,
hanging by a thread.
That extra like weight of lifting myself up, and it was like, so it could have been a lot worse because when hers went, it then dislocated as well. So at least mine was just the ligament that went, and I didn't dislocate it as well.
Okay. Do you remember what actually happened that like you had that initially like, oh, that's weird, and then it's carried on for years?
When it initial, no.
Okay.
Like, it was one of those where I think it was just like you feel it for so long, it just becomes part of like who you are.
Right. The pain just becomes part of your normal life. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's very normal for a lot of us. That's true. So going in now, are you officially retired? Or are you like Tom Brady, Gronkowski retired? What level are we at right now with you?
I'm officially retired.
You're officially retired. So there's no masters for you.
I never said that. I said I was retiring from individual competition.
Okay.
So I class
the lookout.
I class that as like the open age. So never say never. It's just not going to be my main focus. I start the Fire Academy on the 15th of August.
Okay.
So from then I will have 18 weeks of little to no CrossFit training because I'll be the property of the Fire Academy. And when I can do some training, and I'll have the weekends to myself, so I'll hopefully be getting into the gym and doing a little bit to hopefully maintain some fitness levels. So who knows next year.
Okay.
But definitely when I'm like back out on station and I have some more time to myself, I will still be training. So who knows if I'm fit enough to compete in the Masters, then.
Would you rather do like individual masters, or would you rather do super team?
I like cannot commit to the like time and the intensity that you need to train. Like my knee like would not take that volume. Like
Okay.
Just to be able to compete at strength in depth in the semifinals, I had like 3 or 4 weeks of total pain, discomfort, and it's got to the point where it's not enjoyable anymore. So I went and yesterday I had some more fluid drained off the knee and some fresh gel put back in there. So hopefully my knee's going to feel awesome and I get through the fire academy, but I can train at a reasonable level and my body be okay. As soon as I try and take it to be competitive, like in that like individual open age, like my body is like, no.
Okay. And this is the Fire Academy of Cincinnati?
Yeah, so it's called Great Oaks. So I start there the 15th of August. It's an 18-week course. And then hopefully I'll be back out on station in December.
Okay. And that's
very cool.
Is that in Cincinnati?
Yeah, so
Okay.
City of Hamilton.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Rock on. All right. Joust told us that you are, as we are, and quote me if I'm wrong, are we 14 days out from Madison now? I feel like that's right.
Well, yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. Well, we're gonna say it's 14 days out. He told us that he pretty much gave you the keys to Emma. Are you her overlord now?
I am the keeper.
What's she like? To be like a keeper of, like, is she rebellious? Is she like, no, I'm not gonna?
Is it a short leash?
Short leash.
I think
long
she
leash?
listens to me. I think I have some say over.
Okay.
No, like I'm really good friends with Emma. After she helped me get in to see her surgeon in 2016, I flew over to Ireland and I stayed with her for a few days while we saw the surgeon. I then stayed when I came back for the surgery, I stayed with her for a few days before the surgery. And then after that, we started training on and off together. And then maybe 2 years later, she actually started working with Jousey as well. So we've been friends since 2016. We get on well. We've got very similar personalities. So it's just banter. We just take the piss out of each other the full time and play jokes on each other, pranks on each other. Always try to one-up on each other. So this is how bad the one-up comes. Last year in the Open, there was quarterfinals. There was 5 workouts. She'd won 2, I'd won 2, and there was 1 left. And I beat her on it. And I messaged her. There was only an hour to go before the deadline. She was eating pizza with her family and she went out into the garage, warmed up and redid the workout to beat me because she wouldn't let me have it.
That's significant.
That is not fair.
That's significant one-upping.
It's the sodium from the pizza. That's what did it.
Yeah, well, I was like, that is not fair. I'm like, you just couldn't let me have it.
Did she tell you she was doing that, or did she do it and then kind of like sniped it in there?
She didn't reply to like my messages and just
boo.
And then message after she'd done it just with a fresh new time. And I was like, oh.
I mean, those are the environments where I think I've thrived the most too. But yeah, that's really funny.
Right.
Unfortunately, now there's less and less times that I can beat her. So when there is an event that I can beat her, I make sure that she knows that I've just beaten her and that she got beat by a 40-year-old.
Right. I mean, you just resort to sabotage.
Right.
That's what people started doing to me sometimes when we do things that, like, I'd come into the gym and my shoes and wraps would be thrown in the freezer and they'd be frozen solid. I'm like, okay, yep, this is what we've resorted to now. So
Right.
there's still more things you can play on her.
Well, I mean, like that's that too. Like, and you know, Sam and Dustin, you both are the same way. We're all the same way. Where that's kind of the mark of someone who's really dedicated and really crazy. As long as they have a good head on them and they don't go overboard, that's the right kind of crazy right there.
That is the right
That's
I mean, that's what you'd want to see, I think, as a coach too, and an athlete to like, I don't know, they have that spark. And I think that also means that it's still fun, because I wouldn't find myself doing things like that if it wasn't like really fun, like fun competition, I guess, because there's a difference.
And it's because of times like that and the fun that we have that I still train the way I do. And the reason why, after wanting to retire in 2016, I was still going until 2022.
Yeah.
It's like the fun that we have in training is what makes it. The competition side of things just kind of like a bonus at the end of it. It's like the competitions are such a small portion. You've got to enjoy the training around it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you ever? I mean, I'm sure you've been in the States long enough, but you've heard this phrase. You gotta enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just what it comes down
Love
to.
the journey.
Love the journey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Enjoy the trip.
Yeah. You have to though, and that's something I'm really anxious to watch this year's games. I'm really anxious to see Emma and watch you push her, because I think I mean, how many athletes out there in the open have someone like you literally as their cut man, as their Mickey in their corner, like guiding them through it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think obviously like Matt Fraser's turned his hat to coaching and he's doing a great job of it. This is not something that I kind of like want to be like my main focus or my job. Basically in January for Wodapalooza, I was there as Emma's coach and it worked really well. I think because we get on so well and she respects me as an athlete, she respects what I'm saying. So if I tell her how I think she should attack a workout, she's going to respect like what I say. But also as well, like we have fun about it. There's little things that as an athlete, I know kind of like what to prepare or what to like do regarding like food and stuff. And also like what to say. Sometimes the way you say something can change, like if the athlete is going to do it or if the athlete is going to like compete like confidently or not.
Yep. Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because Dustin, haven't I told you multiple times, like, and you've echoed this as well, it's about verbiage.
I mean, you can say the same thing two different ways, and no, I mean, you could have the same message or the same thing in mind that you want to tell that athlete, and you say it in the wrong or the way it doesn't resonate, and it will shut them down as opposed to lift them up. And I mean, the only secret to that is you have to have enough of a relationship with that athlete to know what, like, how to phrase that response. But it's a game changer. I can think about all those moments with coaches that I didn't just trust. I guess trust was the foundation of it, but I truly loved them. I liked who they were as people and how they competed as an athlete and those things. And for them to say the right words at the right time, I mean, it was like putting on a bulletproof vest all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So
super awesome. So Sam, we've had you on for almost an hour. We know you got places to go, things to do, multiple times to train, calories to eat. I have one more question. Dustin, do you have one more you want to ask her?
Yeah. I guess I'm gonna weasel in kind of a two-part because I'm curious. I mean, it's the same question. Just would you, and it might be one answer, but the advice you give to yourself, pre CrossFit Games, but getting into CrossFit, what advice would you give to yourself now? And then what advice would you give to like these young athletes that we're now seeing, if they have aspirations of, competing in the games, or maybe aspirations of trying to win one day? What would you what guidance would you give to yourself and them?
Like to myself, would probably be like, take my time. Like, I think because I qualified for the games, like within my first year of training, I kind of like felt that everything needed to be improved right then and right there. So skipped over a lot of kind of like steps in the process. And I think that ultimately was the result of why I was injured in 2012 and why I needed to spend that time with Jousey, then to strip everything back and rebuild instead of taking that time to learn to move properly, like back in 2009, 2010 when I first started. So I could have saved a lot of time there. For somebody like getting into the sport, it goes back to like what you said about having fun. It's like the competitions are such a small part of it, that if you're not enjoying like the training, if you're not like enjoying the process, then kind of like, why are you doing it? Do you think it's going to be like just to have the fame or the results of the competition? Because they don't last. It's like people talk about when I won the games in 2013, that was such a flash in my career that it's like, it's almost insignificant.
Right.
Like, so like if you're only doing it to try and get a medal, it's like, you're going to end up miserable at the end of it. Like, I've always competed for the love of competing and the love of being out on that competition floor, showing what I can do with all the other athletes.
Sure. No, that really resonates with me. I remember getting what I thought at the time was good advice as a young athlete, and ended up being like the most like derailing little thing that got planted in my mind. And it was like when you'd play like game time, which the amount of games you play over career, like the actual competition itself, that's a small window too. Actually winning them is even smaller fraction of that, and actually being like the MVP or the champion or a singular person, then it's even smaller. And it was basically he was romanticizing, you only get to experience this competition, every once in a while, so you need to try harder here. But I think what's really at the heart of it is like, you need to really enjoy all of the 75% of what you're doing, which is just preparing for that. Because if you don't enjoy that aspect of it, you just feel kind of like you betrayed yourself if all you were focused on was just winning and the competition itself. So I think that's really, really tremendous advice, I think, to at least have in your mind as you're growing as a person and as an athlete.
So Sam, my last question: been in the games 9 times as an individual. Of all those 9 times, looking back through them, what is the biggest thing? If you could just change something about the games in general, what would it be? Gotta change something.
As in, like, change something that I did, or change something that like they programmed, or the way they
programmed, or like the way it's run,
structure,
or the structure of it, something of that nature.
If they'd have allowed us to practice the pegboard in 2015.
Oh, okay. I remember that. I remember watching that not happen.
So
many people. I remember that. That was big.
They decided it would be really cool to watch athletes figure it out on the fly, so they didn't allow any pegboards in the warm-up area. And I just think that if they'd have allowed the athletes to at least like practice in the warm-up area, it doesn't give you that much time.
Right.
No.
Like 15 minutes, something. Yeah.
It's like those who are good on the pegboard are still going to be able to complete it, but at least then everybody didn't have to look like idiots.
I think that's a big point. I think there's also a level, I don't know if people got hurt, but when you're doing something really foreign that you just want to get a feel for, like the diameter of the grips, like just get a sense for it. I don't think you're really giving anyone as much of a time to strategize as much as it is like maybe reduce someone getting injury, or like you said, not looking like a fool, because
it was like, what, on the guy's side there maybe was like 10 15 at the most that completed it out of the field of 40. On the girls' side, there was what, like 3 or 4? It was like, come on, at least like.
Right. The surprise isn't good, and I don't think it actually makes. I don't think it makes anything really look good in that sense when you get only single-digit competitors to complete something. It's like, I don't really think that makes anything look good, especially not
it's like,
the
and
competitors.
it was the final as well. Everybody wants to see.
Good point.
Like, everyone wants to see a race on the final.
Yes, head to head,
not a blowout.
Tight competition. If it's you don't want to. I mean, that's the equivalent of having it decided on like, I don't know, like penalty kicks. I mean, that's a little bit more exciting than that, but it turns into like just who completed it. It's like you want to see, I want to see, you and Emma like a hole away from who finishes first by second. That's what people want to see. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
I mean, to note on that, I mean, like when I went to Madison, I think it was 2017, and I believe it came down to, I think Tia still would have won, but it would have been really close. Do you remember, Sam, that the very last event they were lunging?
Yeah,
and that whole stadium.
Yeah, I like the way that they show that clip now is that Cara could have won if she had beaten Tia. So I don't know if it was actually that close or not.
Okay.
But it definitely, like, it made for a really exciting.
Good drama.
I know.
Right. And if that was
and
a
one of them fails, and then the other one goes, and then the other one.
Right.
It's like, that's what you want to see in a final.
Right.
Like, that's like legit excitement. Instead, what you got was 10 athletes staring at a pegboard.
Trying to figure it. No, Dustin was. It's trying to figure out. And wasn't that pegboard plexiglass or like reinforced plexi?
Yeah, I think it was the wood behind the plexi.
It was wood behind plexi. So you start sweating and you get sweat on there. And if you touch that again, like it just goes bad. Like your foot hits your sweat from your knee. Not good. I remember that.
Yeah. Whereas if we'd have had time to practice, like, I am not saying that I would have got all those pegboards, but at least I had a shot of getting at least one. Right. Instead of just being like, I have no idea what I'm doing right now.
Right.
Do you think that every event you should have a run through if it's something somewhat foreign? There's at least a dry run unloaded.
Well, it's like, so when they tested that with the demo team, they got Telena Fortunato to test it, who was an ex-gymnast and whose nickname is Spider Monkey.
Probably going to do pretty good.
That seems like that's your name.
She climbed the pegboard. She said to them, she was like, I think that the athletes, as long as they get shown what to do and have some time to practice, will be able to do it. So she like openly said that she thinks that people should have some time to practice. And so they took that and went, oh, okay, throw it out the window. Let's just.
Okay.
Can you not get comfy?
Okay.
What's happening?
Yeah.
All right, well, hey, Sam, we've had you on for over an hour. We know you have things to do. Is there any words of wisdom you want to impart? Is there anything you want to plug?
I'll just wait till he's climbed up on me.
There he goes. Yep.
The love of a pit bull is a special kind of love.
That's true.
Yes.
It's my favorite.
He's bored, that's why now.
Yeah.
So we have Teddy, who's the young one, and then we have Groot, who's fast asleep.
Groot.
Yeah, he found.
Right. Yep. Follow your dreams. Like, you don't know where they're going to take you. Like, I was 27 when I started CrossFit. When I was 30 and giving up being a firefighter to pursue the career as a professional athlete, everybody thought I was crazy. But hey, look at me now. I've just turned 40 and I've only just retired from being a professional athlete. So sometimes the crazier the dream, the better.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yep.
Gotcha. All right, well, Sam, we're gonna cut the recording. We'll get some information from you, and we'll get you on your way. Thank you so much for your time. Look to have you back on down the road as well as Emma and Joust. So
awesome.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks, Emma.
All right, have a good one.